Welcome back to the Power Forward podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Rainica, a mindset coach and former Ivy League athlete, here to help student athletes, parents, and coaches focus on progress, not perfection. Every other week, we'll welcome a new guest with relevant experience to share their perspectives and tools to support growth on and off the field. I am so pumped for you to hear from our next guest, Cara Stawicki. She is a living example of what it means to power forward. Cara is a world champion rower, but she didn't get there by following the typical path. She started later than most as a Lehigh University walk-on and battled self-doubt, injuries, and disappointments. Some might have given up, but Cara made a plan that led her to the podium. She now coaches that mentality through her practice, Be Brave High Performance. Her calm, thoughtful approach helps athletes and leaders break through mental barriers and build resilience and confidence. Welcome, Cara.
Thank you. I'm so excited and pumped to be chatting. I feel like even just before we hopped on to recording, I was just like, I could talk to Jackie forever. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this conversation.
Similar vibes and similar approaches, so it should be a good one. So you started rowing as a college walk-on at Lehigh, but what made you say yes to something completely unfamiliar?
Number one, I'm an athlete at heart. I just am through and through. When I go back into my childhood, I love being part of a team. I was a swimmer in high school, and going into college, I felt ready for a change. Swimming in high school was a little bit of a challenge. I'm sure a lot of high school athletes face this when they've been doing something for their whole life and you hit those plateaus. And I was getting to a point where I was just like fighting for these tenths of a second. And I don't know, I think I just felt ready to do something different. And rowing was not something that I was very familiar with. One of the women that I swam with in high school, she was a year ahead of me. She went to University of Miami and came home from winter break. And she's like, I started this new sport. It's called rowing. Like, that wasn't around where I grew up. So my first introduction was through her. I would do erg workouts with her during her winter break. And it just kind of like put this idea in my head, like maybe this is something I could do in college, give it a try. And one thing led to another. I transitioned, I walked on the team and had a good experience and just kept on going.
I want to dig in a little bit more into swimming and your upbringing and what drove your competitive spirit.
I think more than anything, like the aspect of athletics that I love is that team aspect. So as much as I think I'm a competitor, and I've put a lot of thought into this because it's come up in a couple of different conversations. So I'm a naturally disciplined person. Responsibility is one of my top 5 Clifton strengths. You know, as we were talking earlier, like I'm an oldest child. So some of those elements that come with high performance and come with athletics were a little bit innate in me. I think what drove me to continue to pursue athletics, but then also to continue through college and after college, was just this love of being part of a team. And that's also, it's what drew me in. It's what kept me in. I love the idea and the experience of when you're on a high performing team. And when I say high performing, I don't mean results. I mean, like, you are helping lift each other up, right? Day in and day out. And that's going to like up level your performance. Like, I love it. I love the idea of it. I love the experience of it. As a mental performance coach now, I love like helping other teams facilitate that aspect more than a competitive drive, which I actually don't think is particularly innate in me, kept me in sport.
Well, it's interesting you say the team element, because when I think of swimming, I think that's more individual than most sports. How did you stay focused on the team? Did you ever get caught up in the individual times you had to hit? What was that like?
I agree with you. And I think that is why when I started rowing, I was like, this is the best thing ever, right? Like, so in college, I was primarily rowing 8s. We would row an occasional 4. So my post-collegiate career looked a lot different. But where I was at Lehigh, it was, again, primarily 8s, so like not very much small boat rowing. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world to be racing with 8 other women, so a coxswain and then 8 rowers, and like feeling that connection and helping each other compared to swimming when you're up there alone on the block like on the block, ready to start, right? It would be interesting to hear like how other swimmers think of like the individual versus team aspect. I think there's ways you can make an argument for like maybe collegiate swimming is more team oriented. I don't know because I haven't had that experience and haven't worked with many swimmers to date. But yeah, to your point, I think that's why like my love and passion for rowing really blossomed in comparison to swimming.
What was it like applying to colleges, getting there, and then deciding you wanted to walk on? What did that process look like?
I think what drove my sifting through which colleges to go to and things like that, I think it was more academic than sports related. Keep in mind, so I graduated college in 2005, so I'm trying to like go back into the vault of my memory right now. I want to say that's what I was primarily looking at in terms of, deciding, which colleges to look at and which colleges to apply to. I vaguely remember talking to one or two swim coaches. I did go to what is called the Dadvale Regatta to check out like the rowing scene, and I think at that point in time I had already committed to Lehigh, because I remember meeting the Lehigh coaches there. But yeah, that's what was like driving my decision making more than anything like sport specific. I don't think I looked at any schools that didn't have sports. So I don't think there was ever a time where I had to weigh like, well, if I go here, that means I don't have access to, being part of a team and playing a sport. So I didn't necessarily have to weigh that decision. But again, it was more like what's going to be like the best school for me, what's going to be a good fit, what feels good.
And I would argue that's a great approach, even if you are actively getting recruited, because injuries happen, wild things happen where, you want to be excited to be at the school, even if you don't have that sport. So you kind of did it in a different way, but I would agree that's a very mature approach. So you get to Lehigh. I would imagine walking on to a team is not easy. I can imagine there might be struggles with confidence or proving yourself. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I was a freshman in 2001. Rowing in the US exploded, I want to say like 2008, 2009, 2010. I'm not sure recent data, but it's possible that it's still growing. So the landscape was very different, number one. And number two, the program at Lehigh at the time was a club program. So I want to say the entire freshman crew was walk-ons. Maybe there was one or two that had rowed. Yeah. So we actually became quite tight as a freshman crew. At that point in time, it was like novice and varsity. So novice just meant first year. So I think we had one or two like upperclassmen, but it was their first year rowing. So everybody was in this space where we were learning together. Anything confidence related, because I did struggle quite a bit with confidence, that surfaced a little bit more in my post-collegiate career, less than my collegiate career. Because yeah, that freshman year, we were there, everybody was learning, so it made it a really fantastic space where we were kind of just coming in. Everybody was new. Everybody was meeting each other for the first time. You didn't walk in where there was already this like pre-established hierarchy. Now, so this is making me curious because I know you played for Princeton. Did you go through this recruiting process, and was it like, what was your freshman year like?
It kind of really ramped up in the summer leading into sophomore year, and then again sophomore to junior year. You'd get on an AAU team, play in tournaments, mostly down south, where coaches are watching every game. So it's a very intimidating experience. And then, yeah, you start talking to coaches. And then, I mean, I didn't think it would be a possibility to go to a school like Princeton, but thankfully I had coaches who were, saw that possibility and pushed me in that direction. And I started to believe it too. And then I just fell in love with especially the team at Princeton. So it was kind of like Princeton is the way I was going to go in terms of like the Ivy League. I was looking at other Ivy Leagues, but it's funny that you went to Lehigh because if I wasn't going to go to an Ivy League, I was going to go to Lehigh. I loved Lehigh. It was basically the difference between getting a scholarship or going to an Ivy League school that does not give athletic scholarships. So that was a really hard decision too, because the Patriot League also has a similar philosophy to the student athlete experience. It's very much like academic driven, and they really focus on that balance. But then getting there freshman year, it's like everyone was the best at their high school, at their sport, or in academics. And now you're in a pool of people who've all felt that way and all are the best. And it's a really tough transition. And you mentioned the confidence, it takes a hit. And you kind of just have to, like, it sounds like you did, find those like-minded individuals, which were my teammates, who I was able to lean on and know that they had been through that experience too, and just show up every day and know that you're kind of in it together. But it was really hard. It was a very hard transition for me. And it sounds like you found, something that you loved right away, and could find common ground with your teammates. Did you know right at the beginning? When did you decide, okay, I want to do this professionally, or I have this dream of rowing at the next level?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good question. And well, first, I want to comment on, I think what you're describing in your experience freshman year, that is more reflective of what I experienced post-collegiately. Like,
Mm.
it was pretty seamless for me to go from high school into college. I was always a good student. Like, I was very good at doing what I was supposed to, like, quote unquote, supposed to be doing or told to be doing. You go to school, you do your homework, you study, you go to practice, right? So, like, high school into college was a fairly easy transition. College into real life and, like, and not just post-collegiate training and racing, but just transitioning out of this, you are in a bubble. You are. Maybe it's a little
Yeah.
bit different, like in a city school. I don't know, but certainly when you're on a campus, and I see this now when I'm working with collegiate athletes and collegiate teams, and it's not a bad thing. I'm only making that point just to bring more light to the fact that, like, for me, the difficult transition was leaving college and, moving into work and training post collegiately. In terms of pursuing national team and in terms of that dream, that too was a process. One thing that I don't think I've actually ever talked about before, when I was young, when I was in high school, so I remember watching the 1996 Olympics. I was swimming at the time. So Amy Van Dyken won 3, 4, 5, who even knows, gold medals. Like, women like Janet Evans is coming to mind. I'm not sure if she competed in 96 or prior to that. I'm trying to think of some of the other swimmers, but that was like the one Olympiad where I was like glued to the TV, like watching everything. And whether that inspired something or it was before or after, I'm not quite sure, but this dream of going to the Olympics was planted at that point in time. I was not particularly fast swimming in high school, I think by most standards. So as I was training, feedback I was getting was like, well, maybe we aim for swimming in college, or like playing a sport in college versus the Olympics, like I think that Olympic dream was kind of like dampened, or I don't really know what the right word is. So transitioning into post-collegiate, elite, it wasn't like I graduated college and was like racing elite. Like, that too was
Mhm.
was a process. It was a little bit of this reawakening and kind of like seeing what was possible. Somehow the seed got planted that, like, maybe I could do this. It wasn't like, oh, I want to make the Olympics in rowing right away. And that could be a whole nother conversation or part of this conversation. It was the national team was the goal. I moved to Philadelphia once I finished school, started working, joined a boathouse on Boathouse Row, started competing. And at that point in time, not the boathouse I was rowing for, but a couple doors down, Vesper Boat Club, they had put out the lightweight women's quad. They had some like really high level successful lightweight women, and that's the category I competed in. Same with where I was rowing, Undine Barge Club. So I was able to see other women 2, 3, 5, 10 years older than me doing this thing that I had to learn about. Like, I had to learn about the pathway. I had to learn about the opportunities. I didn't really know a lot of this existed, but seeing that, I started to think, like, maybe I could do it too. one thing led to another. And when I say that, it's not necessarily like the things that I was doing. A lot of it was like the things I was aware of, number one, and then thought like maybe I could do it. Like I had to see myself there, right? But that too wasn't just like a switch that you flipped. Like it was a process.
Lots to unpack.
I know. And I'm sitting here being like, did I answer her question? I think I did.
No, you did. And I think it's just a conversation, honestly, about these transitions and these decisions we make based on what we're being told, what we believe, what we see. Sometimes it's hard to parse out, what do I want? Were you always focused on what you wanted, or did you hear a lot of noise?
Oh, goodness. Well, this was part of like the grand struggle of my mid-20s. I felt this like very strong pull that I wanted to be competing at the top. Like at some point I got there, right? And I felt it like so deep in my heart and my soul. I was so far from it, right? I started at what was like intermediate level sculling after college, which was like the bottom of the bottom. I knew what I wanted internally. I felt a ton of, I don't think pressure is the right word. I think it was like a conflict I was dealing with, which was like, I know I want this, and yet culture, society expects me to be, keep in mind this is 2006, 2007, 2008. So it's not like light years ago, but it's also not, it's different today, right? Felt that I was expected to be getting a job, be getting married, maybe having kids, doing things like that. So that's something that I very much like grappled with and had to work through. At the end of the day, I stayed committed to my sport, right? I do wonder if, let's say 2006, 2007, 2008, I just made a hard decision, like I'm going all in here. That was not my experience. It was a little bit of a gradual, like I was working full time, I was training, and then over the years started working less, started training more, all of those things. So at the end of the day, like it was all like a process of shifts. It was not like one thing.
Right. From the outside too, we see your success at the end of the day. It's like you got the medal, you accomplished what you set out to do, but I can imagine it was not an easy process, especially when you're doing something that's different from your friends, or, even if you're in high school and you're committed to playing in college, you have to live a little bit of a different life than maybe what your friends or maybe what the norm is. Did you have any setbacks, injuries, mental struggles during that pursuit?
Yes. So the first thing that came to mind, my post-collegiate career blossomed, if we want to use that word. I don't even know if that's the right word to use, but quite late. I made my first national team when I was 34 years old. Now, part of that was because I needed to develop the skills and the fitness to actually compete at that level. But part of that too was I went through 3 consecutive injury rehab cycles in my mid-20s, right? When I could and, should have been developing those skills to get me to that level sooner. So I actually didn't compete in 2008, 2009, and most of 2010, I want to say. At times that was devastating. I don't know if I would imagine you've personally had experience with injuries, but for me, it's like, okay, you get the diagnosis the first time. And for me, it was just like, all right, I'm all in, committed to, I'm going to tackle this with your athlete mindset, right? I'm going to do all the PT, I'm going to do the rest. Like you're just like ready to take it on. And then you do the thing. And then for me, like I got, like I said, 3 consecutive cycles. So then I got injured again. So now it's like, okay, I'm going into this with like a little bit less gusto. And then the third time it was heartbreaking from the perspective that like I was confused, right? Like I never experienced, and just to give everybody like a little bit more context, I had not completely torn off, but I had torn all 3 hamstring attachments at my sit bone. So I was misdiagnosed, like MRIs were coming back normal. I knew something was wrong. I finally connected with a doctor who I found the tears through an ultrasound. And the way we healed and rehabbed that was PRP injection, so platelet-rich plasma. injections. So I went through 4 consecutive rounds of that for my right hamstring, and then some other smaller injuries happened like through this cross-training rehab process. But the point I wanted to make in terms of like setbacks and what was really difficult, I was so confused. For me, I was doing everything right and I wasn't getting better and my body was hurting, right? And now I'm kind of weighing things like, well, do I keep pushing through this? But is that going to compromise like how I can show up and work out like later in life? Like that was a question. One thing, and I think I had just like bottled up so much emotion. I remember walking into my chiropractor's office one day and just completely breaking down and like in tears being like, what am I doing wrong? So that's one moment that was really difficult. And then another thing, and this too, like I don't think I've ever really talked about this before. There was one night that I just like cried myself to sleep and I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about it. And what was really heartbreaking for me in that moment was I didn't want it anymore. I didn't want rowing anymore. I didn't want the pursuit anymore. I'm like covered in goosebumps. Aww. I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but the thing was like I didn't know myself without my sport, and not in a bad way. Not that I don't want to start conveying that like my identity was attached to my sport. I just didn't know who I was without it. I'd been an athlete my whole life. So then to be in this place where I suddenly didn't want something that I had loved for my entire life was confusing. It was devastating. So those were some of like the more difficult injury related early moments that I had to work through.
Mm. Then after that moment, what kept you going?
That's a great question. I don't even know. Goodness, I never fully reflected on that. I mean, maybe that's where some of like the discipline comes into play, right? The just keep showing up. I can say that I needed to remove myself. I think it's really hard, and I think you probably get this more so this is after college, right? I'm part of a team, but I also have more ownership over my training and what I'm doing. So when I was rehabbing and going through that, I was not going to the boathouse to bike, for example. I completely removed myself from that environment. I joined a gym that was close to my work. I went back in the pool. I was swimming for exercise. So that kind of just like helped keep me going because I knew it was going to be too difficult for me to be like seeing my teammates and the people doing what I wanted to be doing when I couldn't. I think with most setbacks, whether it's injury or something else, and if I could too even like now speak with a little bit of a coaching lens on what can you do? You show up like and you do the best you can the next day, and then you do the best you can the day after that, and then the day after that, and maybe it looks a little bit different. Maybe one day it's like I need to cry today. And then maybe the next day it's like, okay, I'm going to get myself to the pool today. And then, you're just kind of like building. And I don't think I had like the language or the tools for this at the time, but also like, and this even ties back to what you were saying about kind of vetting colleges, for example, like being aware and paying attention of what you need in that moment, what you want in that moment, what you value, right? I know you do some work. I think you do some work with core values. Like to me, that's foundational for anybody. I wish I had done work like that way earlier than I did.
I'm also wondering, was it like, I'm going to the world championships. That is my goal. I am not going to stop doing this until I get there. Or I can imagine you probably thought, okay, is this worth it anymore? Especially when you're maybe older than some of your peers. Was there a moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to reassess, is this worth it or not, and keep going or not?
In terms of the World Championships, no, I was not like, I'm going to keep going until I get to this point. I don't think I ever assessed, is it worth it? I think, now keep in mind too, I had a very long career. The last World Championship I raced in 2024, I was 41. And then the last national team I competed on was 2022. So I was 39. So I had a very long career. And I'm bringing that up because your perspective and also your values, like they shift and they change and they evolve over time. So I actually think I got to a point where I was kind of taking things a year at a time and more evaluating, is this still serving me? Is this still serving my family? Right. And when I say my family, I'm talking about my husband and I. Like we're going on, math is not my strong suit. I think we're going on 18 years married. We got married in
That's
2008.
amazing.
So Kyle, my husband, was very much like part of this journey. So there was like as each year went on, he's my priority, right? My family is my priority. So if there was ever a point where it felt like this pursuit was hurting, like what one of the things that I truly value, like that was probably going to be a deal breaker. Fortunately, like we were kind of on this ride together, and we still are actually. I'm still integrated on the coastal rowing side. That's a little bit different. So to answer your question, there was no point where I was thinking, is this worth it per se? I think it was more of just like, does this still feel like something I want to pursue? More like that.
Mm. What drove you to become a coach now? And was there a specific moment that brought you here?
Yeah, I love coaching. So, and also just to let your listeners know, I don't coach on the water. I'm not your typical like coach to athlete when you think of that. I do executive and mental performance coaching. I'm certified through ICF, International Coaching Framework, right? And one way that we distinguish coaching from consulting or even like psychology, coaching is forward looking. We are, and that's not to say that we don't address things like limiting beliefs and things like that, but we're not doing deep dives into anybody's past. We are talking about our vision and then we're co-creating that path forward. It's about learning, it's about growth. And I think I just like gravitate towards that, number one. And then number two, we have like our mutual friend in Samantha. Like, so I worked with her. She was my high performance coach during the later years of my career. So she
Oh,
certainly
no
like
way.
inspired me. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So you lived it. You had a coach who inspired you, and then you thought, you know what, I want to do this. I want to inspire athletes. I love the word co-create with them, this vision. What does it look like when you work with an athlete or an executive?
I lead a small group coaching course at the moment. We're actually just wrapping up in, I don't know, a week or two. I'll lead another one starting in June. So that's something that's actually been new for me that I've been loving and really enjoying. Traditionally, I do one-to-one work with athletes and executives, and I'm doing a little bit of work with teams. At the moment, everything is completely customized based on that person's needs. I'm moving towards a place like generally I'll do like a 9-month engagement, let's say like one-to-one engagement, where I would be meeting with like the athlete or the professional about every other week. Let's say an athlete comes to me and they have an event coming up in 4 weeks. Now we might dive right into something that's going to support and help their performance there versus like thinking about like, okay, we have 9 months to work together and this is like where this athlete wants to go and this is how we're going to tackle it.
And also, if an athlete might not know what their goals are, I think you can help them set them and work in that direction. Thinking back to the little girl inside of you, what would you tell her?
The first thing, believe in yourself. And that is easier said than done, right? But that's number one that I would tell her. And then second to that is like find your people. And that might be one person, but having that mentor or that coach or that trusted advisor, somebody you can lean on and trust because it is not, it's not easy. Whoever you're looking at the top, they did not get there by themselves and they did not get there without any sort of like setback or adversity along the way. And it's so important in those moments to have like that inner circle of trust or that one person to lean on and help you through it.
Oh, couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for joining me. Where can listeners find you?
Yeah, so my website is carastawicki.com and on Instagram, same thing. Cara Stawicki is my handle. I'm also on LinkedIn and I think those are all the places.
Well, you're a great follow and great inspiration and mentor, and I'm excited to continue our relationship and continue learning from you. So thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. This was super fun.